Yes and
Yes.
yes.
Okay, great. Um, just a reminder too, if you've got background noise going on, you can mute yourself so that everybody can hear. And then if you have a question, you can raise your hand or you can also put it in the chat. Diana is going to be watching for people sitting in the waiting room, and then she can also feed questions to us. On here also is my wonderful colleague, Risa. Oh, Risa, we see you. You're not in your car.
I moved to the car in a little bit.
Oh, okay. All right. So, welcome everyone. I'm Sue Bell. I'm the founder and executive director of Homeward Trails Animal Rescue, located in Fairfax Station, Virginia. And on me as well, co-presenting is Risa. Risa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Risa Courier, the Director of Department of Animal Sheltering in Fairfax County. And I run the Fairfax County Animal Shelter, which is the county's only municipal shelter. And I see also Gina Lynch, who's on here as well, who's the president of our Animal Services Advisory Commission and also a legislative guru in her own right. So we have quite a few folks on here I'm seeing that have some great legislative experience. This is great.
Thank you. And Risa, beyond just her current position, Risa and I have worked together for over a dozen years. That sounds crazy, but Risa was the founding director of, or founding board member of Humane Dominion, which for a number of years was Virginia's first and only political action committee for animals. And so, and then prior to that, she was with the Humane Society of the United States. So she comes to us with just vast experience from national to state, both on the 501c3 side of advocacy and legislation, as well as the political action side. So the point of this session is just to talk to you all out there about the importance of advocacy and lobbying, how to really understand it from the very most basic grassroots perspective, which most of you are representing, with a goal on our part to hopefully break it down and make it not seem so icky and so overwhelming and so daunting, and give you some very specific steps on how to get started, again, why it's important, and then to just touch briefly on some of the laws and give you some resources about how to find things. We will make this PowerPoint presentation available to you, and both Risa and I can be available for follow-up questions and comments. This is a training we've done in some communities. So if after this you feel that you have a number of community members or volunteers in your community who might benefit from a presentation like this to get them started, we are certainly happy to talk to you about that. Okay, so to get started here, this is essentially a toolkit to give you. Again, we talk about why it was compiled and what our goal is here, often to address barriers. We know that many people do not engage in lobbying and advocacy because A, they feel like they're not allowed, or they don't know where to start, or that all politics are icky, or that their individual voice or organization might not make a difference. And we're here to tell you the exact opposite. We are voters, we are residents, we are people who elect the very people who are the decision makers in our cities and our counties and our state. So we actually hold the power in terms of what laws are passed, what proposed laws are defeated, and who gets elected and who doesn't. So we're going to start first with making sure that you understand just the basic local government structure. This particular page is not all of that helpful, but it does give you the information for the House clerk. So those are people you can Google and you can contact if you need very specific information about the structure of Virginia's local government. What impacts us the most is this right here. Virginia has 38 independent cities, 95 counties, and 191 incorporated towns. So that makes us a fairly complex state. Some of the traditional forms, as you'll see, are down here on the left. And your first duty in terms of where you live is to figure out what local government you are operating within or under. Do you have a county board of supervisors? Do you have a city council? Do you have a mayor? Do you have a city manager? Those are all very, very important people to know. because they play directly into what you can and can't do at the local levels. And those are the people, not only whose names you need to know, but you need to know what their history on supporting animal issues are. You need to know where they live. You need to know where they do business. You need to know who their friends are. You need to know if they have dogs or cats. Those are the people that you, to get started, want to spend the absolute most time getting to know. And in a lot of small cities and counties, these are your neighbors. They probably have kids that go to school where your kids go, or maybe you go to the same church, or you're in the same running group. Maybe they're volunteers at the shelter. Your job is to find out as much as you can about these people, because they're your neighbors, and it just makes them a lot less intimidating to reach out to. So this is the county government. A number of us, I mean, RISA, for example, Fairfax County, operates under this county government. And again, the Board of Supervisors are elected people. The number of supervisors on any board varies. The structure of that board also might vary. I think RISA and Fairfax, the Board of Supervisors are elected by jurisdiction, right? They're not all at large.
So we have one at large. Chairman McKay serves the entire county, and then the rest, right?
Okay, so when you have representatives representing jurisdictions, again, your jurisdiction in your particular county might consist of only a few hundred people or a few thousand people. So again, that gives you an incredibly powerful voice and an incredibly powerful vote. Fairfax County is gigantic. So even though they are divided by jurisdiction with that one exception, it's still a much more manageable piece. That doesn't mean you don't want to get to know all the Board of Supervisor members, because usually votes are done by a majority or otherwise. But the first point is to get to know the person who directly represents you. To the right are constitutional officers and appointed county officials that are generally included. This is not all inclusive. Some counties have these, some counties don't. But this just gives you an idea of what constitutes a county government. And for a number of these people, you might have already been in touch, for example, with the county school board or the school superintendent or the zoning appeals. As we get further into this, you will understand why people like zoning can be really important in your efforts to address certain animal issues. City, towns, and governments. Again, we have 38 cities and 191 towns. I'll refer to Gina Lynch here because she is in Fairfax County, but Fairfax is one of those confusing areas where you've got Fairfax County and then you have a city within the county. And that city happens to be run by a mayor and operates under a town council. And I personally, having done a number of legislative issues in Fairfax City, I was dealing with the mayor and the city council. That's not to say that those issues don't impact the county. They do, but those issues are decided solely by the mayor and the city council. It's important to note here that, again, while Fairfax City operates entirely autonomously from the county, what happens in the city certainly impacts the county and vice versa. I mean, issues bleed over. Animals do not know geographical lines. And if you're addressing an issue, for example, like pet stores, and you're able to abolish them in a city, which we essentially were able to do in Fairfax City, that doesn't mean that Fairfax County has got rid of all of its pet stores. And that county pet store might be only a couple miles away from the city pet store that no longer exists. So it's really important, again, to get clear on whether you're in a county or a city, what government you're operating under. And once you figure that out and you start to get clear on the people who are on the town council, who's your city town manager, who your city attorney is, who the treasurer is, who the director of planning, each one of those people absolutely plays a role in animal issues. And then after you get through all that, your next task really is to figure out if you are kind of embedded in a county, what that county structure looks like as well. Anything to add there, Risa, being in a gigantic county that also has a city in it?
No, I think it is really confusing for residents. And residents of Alexandria that are part of Fairfax County often go to the wrong animal shelter. And Alexandria Animal Shelter will say, well, what schools do your children go to? And then, oh, they go to Fairfax County schools, and that's how they know. But that it's just so essential to understand where those lines are, those geographic lines, so you know where you live.
So that's our first piece of advice. If this is confusing to you, it's confusing to everyone, but don't let this be a barrier to getting started. You are not alone. And again, we're here to kind of help you walk through this if you want to get started in advocacy and legislation, but are feeling confused about who the heck is even the boss of your city or your county. You're not alone in the confusion. Okay, Dillon rule. This has a huge, huge impact on what we can do legislatively, both at the state and the local levels. It seems really obvious and easy to understand, but I swear every time I try to, I get really confused. But here's a little blurb on what Dillon rule is. And essentially, local authorities have limited ability to pass bills, and they can only really do that by the power given to them by the state. And it says right here, our cities and counties must obtain permission from state legislature if they wish to pass a law or ordinance which is not specifically permitted under an existing state legislation. Let me see. I don't think I have another. Yeah, there is another slide. I don't think anybody's going to want to read through this, but this does talk about how the Dillon rule impacts your local legislative efforts. It would, in some ways, it would be really glorious if we at the city and county levels could, for an example, run off and just ban pet stores from operating. That is not allowed because that authority has not been granted to localities to ban pet stores. The state will not permit it. So we have to get creative, and we'll go into this a little bit later, in addressing issues like pet stores through zoning and permitting and inspections. And those are creative ways for getting around the Dillon rule. Risa, anything to add? You know, I hate talking about this because
no one likes talking about the Dillon rule. But I think, you know, again, your local elected officials have a lot of expertise in navigating the Dillon rule. And so, you know, it's important to defer to them because it's a bit unruly and complicated for a seminar such as this. But if you have any specific questions, we can definitely assist you or point you in the right direction.
I will say that the true importance of us individual animal welfare advocates knowing the Dillon rule is for several reasons. One, if you don't know it, you might go out and waste a whole lot of time drumming up your ideas on a really progressive law that you find out you just can't pass at the local level because the state won't allow it. The second reason is the more you understand the Dillon rule, the more you can tax your brain on how to get around it. And pet stores is exactly that example. You would think that we wouldn't be able to do anything for pet stores to push them out or to curb their activities, but actually you can. You just have to get a little creative. And that's, again, we're here to help you should those issues come up. But Dillon rule is something that is really, really important to recognize and understand. Does anybody have any specific questions about Dillon rule right now that you wanted us to address? No? Okay. Okay, so it's really important for you to know what local and state laws exist. And thankfully, there is a Virginia code book out there. And it's something that everybody should have. It's the Virginia Comprehensive Animal Care Law Book. I will say right now that all Federation members get one complimentary copy as part of your membership. They are printed every year to update the new laws that were either updated or passed the previous General Assembly. This is kind of the animal advocates' Bible. When you're out in the community and you're driving around and you're someone who's constantly plagued by, you know, animals on chains or animals running at large or a house that you suspect might be hoarding or repeated offenses, you will have to rely on your comprehensive animal care law book to tell you specifically what is legal and what is not legal. What seems inhumane doesn't mean that it's illegal. And knowing the laws through this particular book is vital. I've known a lot of people in the areas that we work that have this book in their car and have 14,000 little Post-it notes coming out of it with cheat words, so that if they are trying to, for example, address a dog on a chain, they know exactly which code to go to. And we'll get into that a little bit later about why it's so important to actually know the specific language of the law, because that is going to help you communicate with your animal control officers in an educated way. It's going to help you communicate with your elected officials in an educated way. And it's going to help you collect the evidence you might need if you're out there in the community seeing things that you know are wrong. To be clear, Willie, stop it. Every single Zoom call, he does this. Okay, so let's talk about lobbying and advocacy. Again, a lot of organizations out there, 501c3s, feel like they cannot lobby. Sometimes your board will tell you you can't, and they might think it's because you can't. Absolutely, you can. And Reese and I will tell you, we feel incredibly strong about the importance of lobbying. And it says here, again, the IRS actually encourages nonprofits to engage in lobbying and other advocacy activities as long as you adhere to some broad spending limitations. And those guidelines are easy to follow and they are out there. Animal welfare issues, as Reese and I will tell you, again, having spent a whole lot of time down in Richmond, they cross all political lines. So whether you are a right-leaning person or a left-leaning person in your area, and whether you have right or left-leaning elected officials, do not let that blind you to think that you cannot approach these people. Reese and I will tell you that we have walked into rooms before in Richmond where the only issue that we might have agreed on with every single person in that room is dogs on chains or pet stores, or TNR. So when you're advocating for animals, you have to put your blinders on and remember that you are essentially single issue oriented. And you have to work on behalf of the animals and block out all the other issues that might cloud your judgment. Some of our staunchest advocates in the General Assembly have been incredibly conservative, and others have been incredibly left-leaning, and they have come together and actually co-sponsor bills at our request. So do not let political affiliations scare you off. Here are just some examples of acceptable things that organizations can do to lobby. After the slide, we'll talk to you about what you can't do. You absolutely can lobby for the passage or defeat of a bill and a law. So if there is an ordinance or law that you want to champion at the local level, your organization can absolutely get out there and talk about that and tell people why it's important to pass or kill that law. You absolutely can educate your candidates and your lawmakers about your organization and the issues. So if you have, 4 candidates running for mayor and you want to figure out, who you want to work with, you're going to get out in front of each of those candidates and make sure that they understand your organization and what issues are important to you. Same thing about educating your members. We at the Federation do this a lot. Our team is often down in Richmond, and then we're reporting back to you what bills are on the floor that we want to support or amend or kill. And we do our best to kind of educate you all on why the bills are important, how they will impact you, and whether or not you need to be contacting your legislator to either support or kill those bills. You can create and distribute voter education information. One thing that the animal welfare community does not do well, I think, is engage voters as much as we need to on our issues. There are some national organizations out there that do a phenomenal job, everywhere from environmental organizations to the gun lobby. I think we've seen how powerful some of those organizations can be. And sadly, animal welfare, while making some strides in the last few years, is still lagging behind that. So every person in your community who has an interest in animals, you will be doing the animal welfare movement a huge service by educating those voters on the importance of making sure that they vote with regards to the animals in their lives. You can create and distribute nonpartisan voter guides. You can, again, advocate on behalf of an issue during an election. You can educate the candidates, and then you can host and sponsor candidate forums. You've all probably attended a candidate forum before. hosted by any number of organizations, but that's a great way for an animal organization, whether a shelter or a rescue or just a group of individuals, to make sure that all those candidates know you. A lot of candidates like to attend forums because it gets them out in front of very focused crowds at one time, and there is nothing stopping animal advocates from being the ones to actually host those forums.
So Sue, I'll
Yeah.
just pipe in here real quick. So if you are a municipal agency, it is important to seek permission through your leadership. So in Fairfax County, the Board of Supervisors decides our priority legislation. And so I actually am not able to lobby. And so for 501c3s, they have different, there's obviously, it's a difference than whether you're part of a jurisdiction, but definitely do your due diligence and consult the IRS codes and make sure that you're informed before you enter into the space.
Risa, can you talk about, since you are a municipal shelter and you are restricted to your lobbying activities, how then might your relationship with your friends of group or a local 501c3 doing similar work, how and do you all communicate? Because obviously a 501c3 can do what you can't under these restrictions. How might that relationship work?
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated to answer, but like for me, serving on the board of the Federation, we have a legislative committee that focuses on that, those issues, and I'm still able to participate. And depending on the issue, I can serve as a subject matter expert and provide guidance and input, but not necessarily engage in legislative advocacy. So, and I don't, it may be different for different jurisdictions and how they operate. I don't know. Every jurisdiction is probably different when how they decide what bills they're going to support in the Virginia General Assembly. But then, of course, if you have bills being considered, any kind of laws being considered in your local and state level, then that's kind of a separate thing. So it's the short answer is it's complicated, Sue.
Okay, but it's possible. And again, if you are at a municipal shelter, but you have a friends of group or humane society in the community, as Risa said, sometimes one of the most important things you can do is be an issue expert. Making sure that they are aware of the challenges of, for example, your animal control officers when it comes to enforcing laws or resources in your shelter. So it's always vital to work together as much as possible, the nonprofits, municipal shelters in your community, and recognize each other's restrictions and abilities and try to fill in those gaps. But again, I think one of the best things you can do as a municipal shelter, if you aren't able to lobby, is become an issue expert, because you're providing information that those of us who are not running municipal shelters couldn't possibly know as well. Okay, so some of the things you cannot do as an organization in terms of lobbying. You cannot endorse or oppose a specific candidate. You cannot use your organization to make a campaign contribution or cover an expenditure for a candidate. You cannot let candidates use your facilities, resources, or mailing lists unless that's available to everybody. You can't use an election communication explicitly designed to favor or oppose a candidate. And you cannot ask a candidate to sign specific pledges on any issue, which would then be considered an endorsement. This is essentially called electioneering. And the reason brilliant Risa and Laura Donahue at the time created Humane Dominion, which was a political action committee, was because a political action committee is a C4. They can do all of these things. And these are incredibly vital and important activities, but you as a 501c3 cannot do these. So it's important to know the difference again between what you can do and you can't do. And this is a great list to refer to. You can also Google these lists any place and you're going to see an even longer list of things you can and can't do, but we're also here to help guide you if there's things you're thinking about doing or not doing in the future. But this is a pretty basic, good, solid list that we have. These are just a couple of examples of animal-related issues that can be addressed at local levels. Tethering, we have more than 13 localities now that have tethering ordinances. What exists at the state level, I honestly can't even remember at this point, but I will say that I've worked with wonderful people, and I think I saw Jen Toussaint on here. Am I making that up? Did I see her name? I thought I saw her. Um, I personally, living in Northern Virginia, have worked with Fairfax City and Arlington County to pass tethering ordinances that are quite strict, limiting the ability of a dog owner to tether their dog for no more than 1 hour at a time, whereas that does not exist at the state. And so some issues are easier and better addressed at the local level, with the hope that at some point enough localities in Virginia will have really strict tethering ordinances that then the state might feel compelled to pass a really strict tethering ordinance. But tethering is one of those things that can be very complicated based on the locality, because what might work in a very urban area is not necessarily going to work in a rural area. But I think most of us know that we do tend to see more animals tethered in rural areas, which is something that plagues us. Tethering is not illegal. We have chipped away at that issue in the past by getting weather restrictions included in tethering, the length of leashes, the types of shelter that has to be included. But tethering, I know, is something that is near and dear to many people's hearts, and it's something we continue to chip away at. And quite honestly, it's a very local issue that you can and should be working on if it plagues you. Pet stores, we touched upon these briefly. We've had some success getting pet stores to leave the area, mostly through zoning restrictions or permitting or inspections. Exotic animals, we've done a lot of work on those. I know I worked really closely with the Arlington Animal Control to pass an exotic ordinance just a few years ago. When researching it, we realized, oh my God, you can own a monkey. You'd be surprised what people can get away with in your county, and do get away with it. Again, that's a very local issue, but you can make a lot of headway. Limits on animal ownership, those often vary from rural to urban areas. How many pets can be in a home or in a particular size of land. Trap, neuter, return is something that continues to plague us both at the local and state levels, with understanding who can do it, who can't do it. We're kind of at a standstill in kind of a good way at the state level, but there is progress to be made at the local levels. And then again, things that we see in the rural areas are leash laws and dogs running at large. The magistrate system, we're not going to go into in too much detail, but this is a system that most people I talk to do not know. So this is an important tool in your toolbox to have. And I became aware of it well over 10 years ago when I was working on a very large scale hoarding case in Goochland, Virginia. And there was a woman who had over 100 dogs. We worked with her for over 7 years and removed almost 1,000 animals from her property. And we're not getting anywhere with animal control. Animal control was actually bringing more animals to her property from the shelter. Our efforts to go to the state vet, et cetera, just were going nowhere. We were beating our heads against the wall trying to get some help for the system. So ultimately, we discovered that we as citizens could go to the magistrates and fill out a complaint ourselves. And we did that with some success. Sadly, a fire later brought us the most success. But I won't go into this in too much detail, but you should absolutely know that this is a tool in your toolkit. And if you are not getting anywhere with your local animal control, you're not getting anywhere with your county attorney, or you're not getting anywhere with your sheriff's department, and just feeling like you're at a standstill, you have quite a bit of power here to voice this complaint directly to your magistrate. Not going to go into this, but this is what a basic the complaint form looks like. You're just filling your information, what your complaint is. Again, it's really, really important for you to know animal law code. you can't always assume that they're going to figure out what your complaint matches to which law code. So if you're able to file a complaint and put in there very specifically what this individual or organization or household is doing to violate which specific law, you're going to get a lot further more quickly. And you're going to cut down on some of the work that someone's going to have to do to go out and try to figure out what your complaint matches up with. Commonwealth attorneys and animal law. Again, we won't go into too much detail here, but the Commonwealth attorney is the attorney representing your specific jurisdiction. And so when people in your area are charged with crimes, it often is going to go to the Commonwealth attorney first. This is a good person to know. And again, going back to your elected officials, it's a really good idea to know as much about your Commonwealth attorney as possible, because they often are the ones deciding if they're going to charge someone for a crime they've been charged with or dismiss it. And we do hear in a lot of jurisdictions that a lot of complaints that are brought against people for animal issues do end up being dismissed. And that's for a whole number of reasons, some legitimate and some not. But don't ever underestimate the power of a personal relationship that you can have with any decision maker in your area. That doesn't mean they're going to go against the law or break the law or ignore the law, but a lot of this comes down to subjectivity. And if you are developing a respectful, educated, helpful relationship with these people, I guarantee you it often does pay off. How a bill becomes a law, this actually starts to go into the work we do at the state level in Richmond. What we've been talking about thus far is local advocacy and lobbying, which if you're going to get started, that's a really, really great place. Not to say you can't do both, and both are very important. Like I said, we work really hard in Richmond to get state laws passed. But oftentimes getting a law passed at the state level is much more difficult than it is to get done at your local level. So when they say all politics are local, we believe in that as well. But here's just information about the General Assembly. General Assembly cruelly kicks off in January. So when we're down there lobbying, it's the coldest months of the year. The sessions are quite short, so there is a whole lot of work being done in a very short period of time. Again, members of the Virginia Federation of Humane Society and the Legislative Committee, which we have, are down there. But a bill can be introduced in the morning that we very, very strongly support, and we're messaging out to you, support this, call your legislator, email your legislator, and by that afternoon, it's been hijacked, amended, and boom, now we're trying to kill that bill. So when you receive communication from the Federation and others about support this bill, kill this bill, it's not that we've lost our minds. It's that the bills can change that quickly in a day and a week, and certainly during the very short General Assembly session. You yourself as an individual and an organization can initiate a bill that your elected official takes to the state. That honestly is how almost all animal bills get introduced. Someone, for example, who is trying to do TNR in their area and has been thwarted has gone to their legislator before and said, hey, listen, here's what I'm doing. I want you to carry a bill to make what I'm doing legal. Again, pet stores. We've had a number of people say to their local legislator, hey, listen, this is what's happening at this pet store in my jurisdiction. I really need you to introduce a bill that's going to make it harder for bad pet stores to operate. So again, knowing the laws and what exists, and then looking at your situation of what doesn't exist, and knowing everybody from your local elected officials to your delegates is absolutely, absolutely important. Those representing you in Richmond are also your neighbors. They're just not sitting on your county board of supervisors or your local city council. They're part of the General Assembly, but they represent you and your specific geographic location. We're not going to go into all this, but this is the very complicated process of how a bill becomes a law in Virginia. When we share this with you, you can make it a little bit larger. It was hard to get on the slide. But suffice to say, it's a very, very fast moving process. But we at the Federation do our best to feed you the information in a timely manner and make it simple for you to participate. Phone calls to legislators and emails to legislators on issues are absolutely positively counted. We have had elected officials come to a committee and say to us, wow, I've logged the most number of phone calls and the most number of emails on this issue than I have in my entire career. And that speaks to them. So don't ever think that your phone call or your email is not being followed. It absolutely is. And that should encourage you to get all your followers and your neighbors and get it out on Nextdoor or use your email addresses to make sure that your supporters are absolutely making those calls and emails. I promise you, every single one of them is being counted and logged. This just talks again about the benefits of local versus state efforts. We just tapped on this a little bit. For those of you who have limited time, which is all of us, pick one. Just do something. Don't just do nothing. If you are more comfortable participating at the local level, fantastic. You are needed. If you are interested in getting involved at the state level, fantastic. You are needed. There is something to be done for everybody out there. And a lot of times people get their starts working locally and then work their way up to the state level. If you're working locally, ultimately you're going to meet your state representatives as well, and vice versa. So no matter what level you get started on, you're going to end up meeting and getting to know all the same people. And as you go, you're going to learn how to strategically use that to your advantage. Okay, here are some things that you can do locally. The one mistake that most people and groups make is they only get involved in lobbying and advocacy when an election is getting ready to happen or when the General Assembly is about to kick off. And by then, you're almost too late. So these are things that you should be doing year round. Let's start, for example, at the local level. If you are in a city and you have a city council and you have a mayor, your first job is going to be to get to know who those people are, introduce yourself, let them know why you're reaching out, get to know them a little bit. It can be coffee, it can be one-on-one, it can be getting a group of neighbors together, it can be getting your board of directors together, it can be getting all of your volunteers together to just introduce yourself and talk to them. A get to know you event is time very, very, very well spent. You need to be in contact with your elected officials regularly. Again, if you're reaching out to them right before or after an election or during General Assembly, you're too late. You need to create a calendar. It can be quarterly, it can be monthly. And you can come up with all sorts of excuses to communicate with them. Maybe in January, you invite them to the shelter. Maybe in February, you invite them to a fundraising event. Maybe in March, you're giving them an award for something they've done in the community on behalf of animals. Make sure that they are on your mailing list and do not contact them only when there is an issue. I mean, as human beings, we are not particularly happy when the only time we hear from people is when they need something. You kind of have to feed the beast. You have to be in regular communication with them, talking to them just to keep them updated, talking to them when you need something, talking to them when you want to thank them, talking to them when you are upset with something they did. But the best thing you can do is create a calendar for yourself or your organization or your group and do something every month or quarterly to make sure that your elected officials know who you are. One of the best things that will come out of this is when, for example, your delegate in Richmond is going to be asked to vote on a bill pertaining to animals. You want to be the person or the organization that he or she picks up the phone and calls and says, hey, Barbara, I got this bill coming up. What do you know about it? How will this impact our county or city? How should I vote? That is literally how they make their decisions. So make yourself that expert. I know when I was doing a little bit more work in Arlington and I lived in Arlington, I would have delegates calling me and saying, Sue, tell me what to do. What does this mean? And I would break it down. To Reese's point, I would become kind of an issue expert. You all can absolutely do that. You're already issue experts. And if you're not, you will be, because if there's an issue in your community you're trying to get change for, you are going to become an expert and you are going to be the go-to person. That can be a conversation, or it can be a one pager on that specific issue. But
Sue,
you,
I just want to
yeah,
highlight everything you just said is so important. And I think if everyone takes away one thing from this session, is that building relationships matter, and our elected officials, they want to know what's happening in animal services. They want to know what your rescue, what your shelter is up to, and they love sharing those stories with their constituents, and they want to be part of your community. It's an opportunity for them, and it's an opportunity for you. And as Sue said, don't wait till you have a problem or you are trying to contend with a crisis. Build those relationships with all of the good works that you all do every single day.
and I will say that if you are not the one reaching out to them to educate them on how they should vote, your opponent will. And we've all been there, and we've learned that when we've gotten to a legislator too late and they've already made up their mind, or they've gone in to have the vote and it's gone against us, and we've learned from our mistakes. So don't show up too late, because it kind of sucks to realize that someone got to them sooner and they don't have the right information and they're going to make the wrong vote. But at some point, we only have ourselves to blame because we pushed it off. And it's like everything. If you don't get there first, someone will beat you to the punch. So we actually are very lucky to have an Attorney General Animal Law Unit, which was created in 2015 under General Mark Herring. I'm not going to go into detail all about this. You can also Google the Animal Law Unit, but this has been an absolute amazing gift to Virginia. They have tackled a large number of issues and cases out there, everything from cockfighting to dogfighting to animal smuggling. They're also another tool in the toolkit to go to when you feel or you know that you have done everything in your power locally to address an issue that you know needs to be addressed under the law and you're not getting anywhere. I have called the Attorney General's Animal Law Unit myself personally when I've had issues of obvious animal neglect in a county, had not gotten anywhere. And they have picked up the phone, called the sheriff's office or called the animal control officers right away. And I'll be darned if an animal control officer wasn't out there in 30 minutes doing what I had been trying to do for months. So the Animal Law Unit is a tool. It's not a number you want to blow up regularly. But again, as you get to know the laws more and start to get out there and kind of test yourself about knowing them and build these relationships, it is a great resource to have. And I can speak from personal experience that it has made a difference on situations that I've worked on. And by God, I wish this existed when I was doing that 8-year-long hoarding case, because I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have taken us 8 years to get to the bottom of that. Again, the Virginia Animal Law Codebook, if you are a Federation member, you get one free copy. You can pick it up at the conference, or we can mail it to you. Diana Brown, our wonderful program and admin administrator, can talk to you about that. You can get that. But it's very exciting reading for some people, and it's essential reading for everybody. But it should become your Bible. And like I said, it is updated every year. I think, okay, that is our last slide. So if anybody has any questions or comments or wants to weigh in on any experience or ask us anything further, now is the time. And Diana, if anybody's in the chat and you wanted to share their questions, we can answer it.
They don't really have any questions. Gina shared the link for Fairfax County Board of Supervisors in the chat,
Great.
and there were no questions.
Okay, does anybody have anything they want to say or any questions right now?
Okay.
Anything we said that doesn't make sense, or any issues you all are grappling with at the state or local level that you might want to share, or perhaps something you've done successfully at the state or local level that you can weigh in on any of this. Sharing firsthand experience is often the most powerful. Okay. We can email this to you all if you want. We have, Diana, we have the emails for all the registrants, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Sorry.
Okay, great. Okay, so we can email this to you. Again, the Federation's role in lobbying at the state levels, that we do have a team down there. Oh, I did forget to mention, I'm sorry, I will get in big trouble for this. We have an active legislative committee as part of the Virginia Federation. It's chaired by Holly Hazard. And our previous Federation president, Heidi Meinzer, is also on that, along with, I think, about a dozen people. If that is interesting to you and you might want to get involved, we will, in the email when we send this out, we'll make sure that you have Holly and Heidi's email addresses. That is information, that's activity that's happening at the state level. If you want guidance or assistance on doing things at your local level, by all means, feel free to reach out to the Federation, and we are here to help our members navigate that and get started in any way we can, whether that might be presenting this particular presentation again via Zoom, or possibly in your community in person, or help guiding you on how to get started on specific issues. We feel that it is part of your membership benefits to have our support at these levels, because we are only as strong as our laws. And I know that every one of you out there has come up against an issue before where you didn't feel that the law was strong enough and perhaps didn't know how to go about it. And it's really frustrating and it can feel really demoralizing, but the more we all work together at both the state and the local level, the more progress we're going to make. And I will say that in the last 10 years, we've had some pretty remarkable progress in Virginia for animals. And I think it's just going to get even better. So thank you everyone for coming. I know legislation is not always an exciting topic.
We have gotten a few questions.
Okay.
You want to address those? Are you able to see the chat, or do you want me to read them to you?
No, I can't see it. It's not working.
Okay. Oh, I can see it. Let's see.
Okay, great.
Let's see.
Starting with Linda at 6:20, I think was the first question.
Okay. Does the Federation have on their agenda to help initiate a decline ban?
Great question. That is not on the agenda at this time. Again, that would be a great topic to bring up with our legislative committee. We know other states have done that. The great thing about the legislative committee, and in November, actually, Holly Hazard and Heidi are going to be presenting about the upcoming likely legislative initiatives in 2024, and they can answer questions like that. The quick answer is there's a whole bunch that goes into figuring out what goes on our agenda. And we do work with other groups like the Humane Society of the United States, and the Humane Society Legislative Fund. And then we work as a coalition of a number of rescues and shelters. And we look at whether or not General Assembly is a shorter session or a longer session. And then we have to look at the composition of the General Assembly, who got elected, and figure out what bills we are most likely to be successful at. Some issues have come up every year, and legislators honestly get burnout by things and tell us, you better stop bringing me these bills. I'm just getting so annoyed. And so we stop for a couple of years not to annoy them. But decline ban is not on the agenda. I think it's something that HSUS might have brought up a few years ago, but I have to go back and check. But we will circle back with you. That's something our legislative committee could address.
Okay, the other one, can you explain in more detail about the opposition to TNR in localities?
You want to take that, Risa? Because you're a great locality who's been really successful at TNR.
Yes, I think, Lori, that's a great question. And we know it's a very divisive issue. And it often pits animal lovers against each other. So the Virginia Federation has been pushing for legislation to, I guess, create more authorities around TNR. Is that the way to put it? So, right now there's just some vague areas in the law, and especially for releasing agencies, what their role and ability to participate in TNR is. So, I think we could have a whole session really on TNR. And is that something that we've looked at, Sue?
We actually did one a few
Oh,
months ago.
that's
We had
right.
Heidi and Alice do one on Virginia laws and TNR. We can try to find that presentation.
That would be great.
And we can certainly offer it again, because it is such a big issue and it can be very confusing and vague. Every week we probably get an email from a local person trying to figure out if they're allowed to do a TNR, if they're not allowed to do TNR, what the shelter can do, what the shelter can't. Some of it focuses around abandonment. There's issues of trespassing. It's a very multi-layered issue.
Yes.
But I will say, like Risa said, at the federation level, we are trying to make it so that TNR is very clearly accepted at the local and state level, that barriers to doing it are removed, and then supporting best practices in TNR while recognizing, again, trespassing laws, animal care laws, the impact that TNR has on wildlife. We are big proponents for best practices. The biggest opponents to TNR, as you're probably well aware, are wildlife and bird advocates. And I will say that I myself worked on this a few years ago. We have dialogued with those groups tirelessly on trying to find common ground. And what you will find, just anecdotally, that pretty much everybody out there who loves a feral cat cares about a bird and a bunny and a chipmunk and a squirrel. Those are the people out there saving all the animals. And our kind of language to the bird and wildlife people is, we hear you, we respect you, but trap, neuter, return is the absolute most effective and most humane way to decrease the outdoor cat population, which we all want. No one who's trapping cats is hoping that all the squirrels and the birds and the chipmunks are going to die. It's the exact opposite. What wildlife and bird advocates don't do is come back to us with a solution for decreasing the cat population. What we do know is that the public does not have an appetite for supporting the massive roundup of all outdoor cats and killing them. And there is not money to do that. The animal control departments and municipal shelters don't have money to cover the costs of trapping all those cats and killing them. So what you will find is that when Jane in your community calls you and says, I've got a mom cat and 8 baby kittens living under my shed, can you help me? If the answer to her is, well, yeah, we'll send someone out there to trap them, but we're going to kill them, you know what she's going to do? She's going to do nothing. She's going to do nothing. And those 8 kittens are going to turn into 800 cats in under 2 years. So we feel very strongly about trap, neuter, return being the most humane and effective way to go, both for the preservation of wildlife and for the best care of the cats. And really, it's the only practical solution out there. So the battle wages on, but that's generally our stance at the Federation.
Thank you.
Do you want to mention the disaster training at the end of November?
I do not have those details in front of me. Do you, Diana?
I do. Probably everyone has seen it, but I'll just mention that we're doing a 1.5-day workshop in Wise, Virginia on November 27th and 28th, and then again on November 30th and December 1st in Virginia Beach. And these are free, and it's being put on by the Federation and HSUS. And it's for effective planning for animals in disaster. So be sure to register, and the cutoff deadline for the hotel reservations, and they gave us a great rate, is the 30th of October.
And all that information's on our website too.
Yes. And Facebook.
Lisa, anything to add? you've had such great experience both at the state level and the national level, and now with the municipal shelter, and you're obviously very familiar with 501c3s. Do you have anything you want to, she might be driving right now.
Yeah,
Nope.
sorry, multitasking. The only thing I want to just say is I appreciate all the work everyone's doing here. And I think is, working in animal welfare, we often, we don't tell the stories of the incredible work that everyone is doing every day, and just make sure you're doing that and you're letting your elected officials and other leaders within your jurisdiction and on the state level, let them know what you're doing. Let them know about the vaccination clinics. Let them know about the animals, the return to owners that you've done, and the families that you are keeping whole through your services, because it's powerful work. And they're often really excited to share that information with their constituents.
While we might not be the most organized group of advocates in the world, I do think we, with few exceptions, are the most passionate. So we need, I think most of us would do anything for an animal, and we need to channel that into making a difference. And again, the laws make our work so much easier when they're passed in our favor. One final thing I want to say too is, I can't remember, but it was a few years ago when the balance of the General Assembly between Republicans and Democrats, if you recall, literally came down to a coin toss. And who is in office will absolutely make or break what laws are passed and which are killed. And when that decision comes down to a coin toss, because it's a tie, that tells you right there that every single vote matters. And when you are talking at the local level, sometimes elections are made by not just one vote or 10 votes or 25 votes. We're not talking federal elections here where we're talking about hundreds of thousands of votes. We're literally talking about one vote or 10 votes. And we all know 10 people out there who we can get involved in this. So I just can't stress enough how much every single person call, email, and vote matters. We've seen it. So on the days that you're feeling down and tired, if you can just make the effort to make that phone call or send that email or just find one other person to do it, you will be surprised how much it pays off. All right, it's 6:32. We did this in an hour. Thank you all for joining. It speaks volumes that you are interested in this because it is so powerful, but we know that lobbying and advocacy, again, can feel kind of icky and yucky. So we really want to thank you guys for attending. We'll email this presentation out to you, and you'll have my information, Risa's information, and Diana's information. So if you guys have any other questions or you need any other assistance to put this into action going forward, we are here for you, and we hope to hear from you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good presentation.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.